Brazos Valley ER starting to fill up again as COVID-19 cases surge. What you should know before you seek medical care. Plus, the bipartisan infrastructure bill slowly working its way through Congress. We'll explain why it's still got a long way to go before being signed into law.
And it looks like our summer high is sinking south just a little bit as we move into Saturday. That's going to keep us hot. It's going to be hot Sunday as well, but there could be a little pattern change as we head into next week. Your 25 News starts right now.
Connecting the Brazos Valley. This is KRHD News.
Good evening and happy Friday. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Naya Gonzalez. As the Delta variant continues to spread, restrictions are slowly coming back. KRHD News reporter Rachel Espayat shares how concerns of rising cases are impacting local hospitals.
We've seen the domino effect the pandemic has on hospitals. More cases lead to more hospitalizations.
And that as hospitals fill up, some of those patients require longer hospital stays because of their more severe disease.
The Brazos County Health District says local hospitals are up to about a 31% in hospitalizations, which is about half as much in January.
Very, very busy, but able to maintain.
We're busy. We are in the middle of another surge of COVID, but we're here to serve.
As we see more cases, showing up to the emergency room should be strictly for when it's an emergency because this helps healthcare providers.
If you have an emergency of life, limb, or eyesight, that is what the emergency department is there for. We're there to take care of those immediate medical issues that need rapid attention.
If you have a health concern that your primary care physician can tend to but need a quicker response, going to urgent care is the better route. Doctors are reminding people their doors are open, but taking COVID precautions is still the best way to get through the pandemic.
And it's real important that everybody understand, absolutely imperative, that they're wearing their masks, that they're getting their vaccination, and that they're following social distancing guidelines.
In College Station, Rachel Espayat, KRHD News.
Now remember, emergency rooms are for emergencies only. If you need medical care and it's not an emergency, there are lots of options out there. Urgent care centers are the most recommended for problems that need immediate attention but aren't necessarily life-threatening. There you can get stitches, even x-rays. Retail health clinics are also available in many major pharmacies. You can use those for things like coughs or routine care. You can also visit a walk-in doctor's office or your own family doctor if you need non-emergency medical care. So what's considered an emergency? Mount Sinai says if you have a compound fracture, deep knife wound, or a gunshot wound, seek emergency care. Heart attacks and stroke symptoms also qualify. If you're suffering from convulsions, seizures, poisoning, or severe burns, you should also go to an ER. New evidence shows the Delta variant is just as contagious as chickenpox. This information coming from an internal report presented to the CDC obtained by the Washington Post. The report shows the Delta variant may also pose a greater risk for hospitalization and death than previous variants. The document says vaccines continue to be effective, particularly at preventing severe disease, but when breakthrough infections happen, they may be as transmissible as unvaccinated cases. Meanwhile, as the Delta variant continues to spread, the moratorium on evictions is set to expire on Sunday. Health officials have expressed concerns, saying the majority of Americans behind on rent live in areas with high transmission. In Texas, humanitarian groups are pointing to things like extreme heat and hurricane season as other reasons to extend the moratorium. Now, looking at statewide vaccination numbers, the state health department is reporting nearly 62% of the population is vaccinated. More than 12.6 million Texans are fully vaccinated, with 14.8 million getting their first dose. So far in Brazos County, 342 vaccines have been administered in the last 24 hours. The total number of Brazos County residents fully vaccinated is just under 90,000. 3 Bryan Police Department officers are now equipped to de-escalate situations better, with the goal of preventing violent confrontations between those struggling with mental health and law enforcement. KRHD News reporter Hannah King shares how the department aims to meet our community's needs.
Since April of this year, Bryan PD has been responding to mental health emergencies a little different than before. Officers are now trained to further their de-escalation techniques and recognize how to communicate with someone in crisis. The goal is to provide residents the resources they need.
I suffer from mental illness. I have PTSD, major anxiety, major depression. So when the police come out, if they have knowledge on mental health, they can help us instead of just taking us straight to jail. You know, they can try to diffuse the problem.
The mental health unit has responded to nearly 120 calls for service involving a mental health emergency since it began just 3 months ago. They have also completed around 70 home visits and nearly 200 follow-up phone contacts. In Bryan, Hannah King, KRHD News.
Now, so far, the Bryan Police Department says they have 3 officers who are trained and committed full-time on the mental health unit. In addition, 30 other BPD officers have received training to help with that unit as well. Since April, the mental health unit has responded to 112 calls. This includes 73 home visits and 191 follow-up phone calls. Today, the Senate met to begin the next phase in attempting to pass the bipartisan infrastructure agreement. Our Joe St. George explains why this deal is still a long time coming before it can become law.
The bipartisan deal for infrastructure remains on track to pass in the Senate, with rare weekend work expected. Right now, it has 50 Democratic senators supporting it. 17 Republican senators voted to move forward with debate on Wednesday. A final vote could happen next week, but today, the legislation is still a ways away from reaching President Biden's desk. Remember, the White House is trying to have 2 infrastructure trains leave the station at the exact same time. The bipartisan deal is on train number 1. This legislation includes around $500 billion worth of new funding to improve roads, trains, and broadband. It's paid for by using existing funds like bonus unemployment payments that all these states have stopped or attempted to stop giving out. The progressive spending bill is on train number 2. This is being written to pass through a special process known as reconciliation, using only Democratic votes. It aims to fix education and childcare costs, and more on that is expected next week.
But just because things are now progressing in the United States Senate doesn't mean it's a sure thing it'll pass the House.
No, we haven't seen it, so you're asking me to commit to something that none of us has seen. We are rooting for it. We're hoping for the best.
That was House Democratic Speaker Nancy Pelosi earlier this week, and if she sounded unsure, it's because she can only lose a handful of Democrats and still pass this if every House Republican votes no. Pelosi has already said she won't schedule a vote for the bipartisan bill, train number 1, unless train number 2 is also on the move. Some Democrats in the House have already released statements suggesting they want to be more involved in the process, like the Congressional Progressive Caucus, who said the votes of the Congressional Progressive Caucus members are not guaranteed until we examine the details and until the reconciliation bill is agreed to and passed with our priorities sufficiently funded. Any small change at this point runs the risk of undoing everything, which is why the largest investment in infrastructure in a generation still has a long way to go before it reaches the White House. In Washington, I'm Joe St. George.
The war against COVID has changed. That's what the CDC is warning in an internal document from the agency first obtained by the Washington Post. New evidence shows the Delta variant is as contagious as chickenpox, and the variant may pose a greater risk for hospitalization, intensive care treatment, and death than previous variants. Document says vaccines continue to be effective, particularly at preventing severe disease, but when breakthrough infections happen, they may be as transmissible as unvaccinated cases. Now, a Delta case is spreading and more data on safety and efficacy of vaccines emerging. 2 leading health organizations are changing their language on pregnant women getting the shots.
We think there's enough data to transition from don't withhold this to we actually recommend that pregnant people get this vaccine.
Northwestern doctor Emily Miller is also on the Society for Maternal Fetal Medicine's COVID-19 task force. She says that the subtle change will remind OBGYNs about the science available and to act with more urgency when it comes to educating and encouraging expecting mothers to get the vaccine. Those conversations between patient and doctor can be some of the most impactful in the vaccine decision process, and they can also prompt other questions to which there is available data, like pregnant women are at an increased risk of severe disease or death from COVID because of changes the body undergoes and the fact the lungs have less physical space during pregnancy. There are no findings that vaccines impact fertility, but they can protect babies.
I think it's really impactful that we see cord blood antibodies to SARS-CoV-2, so protective antibodies that prevent infection passed from the birthing person to their baby. And so I think this really changes the framework from protecting the baby from exposure to vaccination to protecting the baby by vaccination.
Pregnant women were not included in original COVID-19 trials. There are global trials underway right now. Now, public health leaders are watching what happens as the first large-scale event returns.
I can't promise that there won't be any COVID cases associated with Lolla. When you're having this many folks who are coming through, almost certainly there will be some cases.
What they say needs to happen to prevent those cases from spreading even more, and the lessons for future events.
We turn now to our consumer alert. Several companies are struggling to cope with inflation. Krhd says the price of materials used to make K-cups continue to rise. That includes aluminum, glass, and corn products. Unilever, which makes toiletries, expects a higher negative impact as prices for packaging material increase. And Southwest Airlines expects to raise wages higher than normal as a way to keep up with wage inflation and retaining employees. And the deals we're seeing online aren't as great as they were a year ago. Numbers from Adobe Analytics show online prices increased by more than 2% since June of last year. Clothes are now 16% more expensive. The cost for non-prescription drugs is also up by about 4%. Some products did become more affordable, though. Computer prices are nearly 10% less expensive. Toys also dropped in price. All right, pet owners, grab your cell phone, take a picture of your screen. These dog food brands are part of a voluntary recall. Sunshine Mill says there may be elevated levels of a toxin produced by mold in the food. The food was sold nationwide under various sizes and lot numbers. If you need more details, the FDA website, fda.gov, has more information. The food can be returned for a full refund. And now let's get a first check on our weather with Chief Meteorologist Matt Hines.
And we are looking at a couple of thunderstorms that have moved through Madisonville, continuing to work their way back toward the west. And a few of those could be impacting part of our region as we head through sunset, and some lightning gusty winds will be the primary threat. These are a little few and far between compared to yesterday, and I think that trend will continue into Saturday as rain chances will likely be less than 20% around here. You can see a whole lot of nothing going on across North Texas into Oklahoma. That's that heat dome that continues to settle into the region. As we check out our future track by 10 o'clock, things are going to be quieting down with any isolated thunderstorm activity dying out, the loss of daytime heating. As we get into the afternoon on Saturday, there could be an isolated storm or two, but again, I think rain chances are going to be less than 20% as we move into Saturday. Sunday, partly cloudy skies across the area, and we could be seeing maybe a couple of thunderstorms late in the day on Sunday. I think mainly Sunday evening going into Monday, we'll have a better chance of some scattered showers and thunderstorms as a weak cold front makes its way into the Brazos Valley. And as we check out your temperatures for tonight, should make it down into the 70s, anywhere between 75 and 77. That's pretty much where we have been all week. And then for Saturday afternoon, how about highs in the mid to upper 90s? It'll feel like it's around 105 when you factor in the humidity. So it is going to be a hot day here across the Brazos Valley. And looking at your forecast, temperatures into the mid to upper 90s through the weekend. Isolated storm chances on Sunday, better chances Monday into Tuesday. We'll put those at 40% with temperatures coming down into the 93 to 95 degree range. And then we'll keep them in the middle 90s as we head through most of next week. There will be a 20 to 30% chance for a few thunderstorms all the way into next Saturday. But as of right now, it looks like those popcorn variety thunderstorms, not widespread rain across the area. So it's going to be a hot weekend. Hope you have a plan to find some cool shade and maybe a cool drink as well.
Lollapalooza is making its return this week after being canceled last year. The annual 4-day music festival is expected to draw 100,000 people to Chicago. This is one of the first giant events in the entire country since we entered the pandemic. More are planned in the coming months, like Bonnaroo and the Governor's Ball, as well as Summerfest. And as Usher Qureshi shows us, there are concerns that a head-on collision with the Delta variant could turn the outdoor concert event into a super spreader event.
Following months of isolation, tens of thousands have flocked to Chicago's Grant Park to escape the pandemic and enjoy outdoor music.
It's my second time out at Lollapalooza. I'm so excited. It's nice and hot. You know, I'm trying to sweat, stay hydrated.
It's the first major music festival in the U.S. since the outbreak began, but it comes at a time when COVID cases are surging in parts of the country.
Are you concerned at all?
You know, I got my vaccine. I'm young. I'm healthy. I think I should be chilling.
Yet guidelines to attend Lolla were recently loosened.
Had them COVID cards ready for the next gate, please and thank you.
At first, proof of full vaccination or a negative COVID test 24 hours before entering each day was required. That was downgraded to within 72 hours of arrival.
Any concerns about infections?
No, we're all gonna die either way.
Masks are mandated for all unvaccinated attendees, but it's unclear how that's going to be enforced once you get past the gates.
Yeah, probably when I'm in the groups of people, probably might wear it a little bit. Just makes myself feel good. I'm vaccinated, but gotta take that extra step sometimes. COVID card out!
The Lollapalooza organizers haven't really made good on their promise to use electronic apps to track vaccination and testing, and so far ticket holders haven't had to upload those things.
A busy July 4th weekend resulted in a cluster of COVID cases in Provincetown, Massachusetts. More than 830 cases. 74% of them reportedly breakthrough infections among vaccinated visitors who became symptomatic.
I can't promise that there won't be any COVID cases associated with Lala. When you're having this many folks who are coming through, almost certainly there will be some cases.
City public health officials admit there are risks of spread even outdoors at massive gatherings like this, but remain confident that they've taken proper precautions.
I'm certainly hopeful that we won't see a significant problem, and I certainly know we're being a lot more responsible than many other settings.
But unlike barriers and fencing, what happens on these grounds can't be contained.
The one thing that will make Lollapalooza into a really dangerous event for the rest of this country will be if people leave Lollapalooza, go back to their unvaccinated communities, and ignore the symptoms that they have afterwards.
Some infectious disease experts recommend getting tested after attending massive outdoor festivals like this, especially if you experience any symptoms.
We plan on getting tested after, a few days after, just in case. You just never be too careful.
But some experts like Dr. Landon say there's only one real way to sidestep the threat.
If you don't want to get COVID, don't go to Lollapalooza.
For now, the potential risk is being drowned out by the music. In Chicago, I'm Usher Qureshi.
All right, Usher, thank you. Now, experts say contact tracing across state lines will be key in assessing the ripple effect of mass gatherings like Lollapalooza. The results could also set the stage for health protocols at other major festivals. While sports like climbing, skateboarding, and surfing are all debuting during the Tokyo Olympics, breakdancing will become an official sport in the 2024 Paris Games. Michelle London traveled to a competition to find out how the B-boys and B-girls are preparing.
These are more than dance moves.
You're on every part of your body. You're spinning, you have to know your balance.
23-year-old Luis Rojas calls his freestyle spins footwork and flexibility an art form. Bowsy is his B-boy name, and breakdancing has been his passion since age 11. Here at the Spot 2.0 in Thornton, Colorado, a suburb of Denver, Bowsy joined more than 150 competitors last weekend before the CDC's new mask guidance. Some of the participants were as young as 4 years old, here to do what they love most.
Today we're doing a competition. It's a 3-on-3. I'll be battling with my crew, Rock Force.
Bowsy, a dialysis technician by day, says traveling the country with his battle crew all started 10 years ago for fun, with sheer passion for the culture. But now he and others are here to prove they have what it takes to compete at the highest level.
So this is like a tryout for the world to see.
National tryouts are underway as breakdancing is set to make a first ever debut in 2024 as an official Olympic sport. Crews traveled here to Colorado from places like Florida, Georgia, and New Mexico to compete for the chance of a lifetime. Richard Yang, known as Rich Flav on the dance floor, is here from Fresno, California.
Pretty groundbreaking. If you asked me when I first started, if I think it would make it to the Olympics, I probably would say no.
Breakdancing is a part of hip-hop culture that originated in New York City in the late 60s, a form of dance that includes back and head spins, incorporating gymnastics, even martial arts. But several decades later, Yang says it still doesn't get the global respect it deserves.
Before, a lot of people always made fun of us and joked around with us, saying that no one does it anymore, or it's just for fun.
As it becomes official in the next Summer Games, Yang hopes the breakdancing culture will finally finally be taken more seriously across the world.
And they just get better and better.
Owner of the Spot 2.0, Ricky Cordoba, opened this breakdance studio back in the 90s to keep kids off the streets and on the right track to success.
90% of them come out of our dance studio, the No More Violence Cultural Dance Group. They graduate and go to college.
We talked about this next generation.
Yes.
What do you think this 2024 Olympics means for them?
Goals, so they could get to the Olympics. They have something to strive for.
After winning first place at a Las Vegas competition the week before, Bowsy is confident he'll reach his goal of landing a spot on Team USA.
Now getting into a crew that's known worldwide, I think my chances are very high. Train every day, I train very hard.
Yang is excited for the next level of exposure and awareness this will bring to breakdancing.
A culture that's not really explored as much as I would like it to be. But yeah, with it being in the Olympics, hopefully we explode.
I'm Michelle London reporting.
Great stuff, Michelle. Thank you. And Cordoba says between 5 and 10 finalists will be selected for the U.S. team. The next big national breakdance competition is the annual Red Bull qualifier, which is tomorrow in Los Angeles.
The need is going to be much, much greater coming out of the pandemic, even than it was going in. And the need was tremendous before the pandemic ever began.
Now, he's talking about mental health, the growing role houses of worship are playing to eliminate the stigma around getting help. The war against COVID has changed. That's what the CDC is warning in an internal document from the agency first obtained by the Washington Post. New evidence shows the Delta variant is as contagious as the chickenpox. Variant may pose a greater risk for hospitalization, intensive care treatment, and death than previous variants of the virus. Now, the document says that vaccines continue to be effective, particularly at preventing severe disease, but when breakthrough infections happen, they may be as transmissible as unvaccinated cases. And with Delta cases spreading and more data on safety and efficacy of vaccines emerging, 2 leading health organizations are changing their language on pregnant women getting the shots.
We think there's enough data to transition from don't withhold this to we actually recommend that pregnant people get this vaccine.
Northwestern doctor Emily Miller is also on the Society for Maternal Fetal Medicine's COVID-19 task force, and she says the subtle change will remind OBGYNs about the science available and to act with more urgency when it comes to educating and encouraging expecting mothers to get the vaccine. Now, those conversations between patient and doctor can be some of the most impactful when it comes to the vaccine decision process. Now, they can also prompt other questions to which there is available data, like pregnant women are at an increased risk of severe disease or death from coronavirus because of changes the body undergoes and the fact the lungs have less physical space during pregnancy. Now, there are no findings that vaccines impact fertility, but they can protect babies.
I think it's really impactful that we see cord blood antibodies to SARS-CoV-2, so protective antibodies that prevent infection passed from the birthing person to their baby. And so I think this really changes the framework from protecting the baby from exposure to vaccination to protecting the baby by vaccination.
Pregnant women were not included in original COVID-19 trials. There are global trials underway right now. Now, checking back in on the lineup. Now, with the CDC's eviction moratorium ending, what legal experts say you need to watch for as scammers may try to take advantage of your situation.
When it comes to college football, the rich are getting richer. The Texas Longhorns and the Oklahoma Sooners are invited to join the SEC. The 14 current members of the group voting unanimously to add the 2 legendary teams. Under the agreement, both Texas and Oklahoma would be part of a 16-team Southeastern Conference powerhouse starting in 2025. The Board of Regents for both schools held a meeting this morning accepting the offer. Still no decision from Simone Biles on whether she will compete in the individual event finals, taking to Instagram to explain her decision to withdraw, and some controversy around the American swimmers with the latest from Tokyo. Here's Jim Ryan.
Will she or won't she? Superstar gymnast Simone Biles still is undecided as to whether she'll compete in Sunday's individual event finals. The 24-year-old explains that she's dealing with a mental block that gymnasts refer to as the twisties. Posting videos on Instagram, she says she isn't able to finish her twists with the caption, "For anyone saying I quit, I didn't quit. My mind and body are simply not in sync. I don't think you realize how dangerous this is on a hard competition surface." American swimmer Ryan Murphy suggests the Olympic races were probably not clean, his words, of doping, seeming to take aim at the Russians after winning the silver medal behind Evgeny Rylov in the 200-meter backstroke and the bronze behind two Russians in the 100-meter race.
I don't know if it was 100% clean, and that's because of things that have happened over the past.
Swimmer Michael Andrew, who is not vaccinated against COVID, stirred up some controversy of his own. He was seen speaking to reporters in the mixed zone without a mask on. The Olympic Committee says he did not violate COVID-19 protocols because athletes are allowed to remove their masks during interviews in that area. In soccer, Megan Rapinoe delivered the clinching kick in a penalty shootout. The U.S. women's national team defeats the Netherlands to advance to the semifinals versus Canada. On the basketball court, the U.S. women's team defeated Japan in preliminary play, marking the American women's 51st straight win at the Olympics, dating back to the 1992 Games in Barcelona. And the U.S. men's baseball team debuted at the Olympics with an 8-1 victory over Israel. Jim Ryan, ABC News, Tokyo.
Well, here's a look at the current medal count. Host country Japan up 17 gold medals. China creeping up on total medal count with 40, 19 of which are gold. Team USA with 41 total medals so far, holding onto the lead by just one medal. The Russian Olympic Committee sitting in third with 34 total medals. The competition continues today in Tokyo.
Today, the USDA extended its eviction moratorium for homeowners until the end of September, but this only applies to homeowners of properties financed or guaranteed by that agency. Millions of other Americans could soon be without a home. CDC's eviction moratorium is set to expire tomorrow, originally put in place almost a year ago. Now, a legal expert that we spoke with says don't be surprised if you immediately get notices from your landlord or your bank.
Especially landlords will be super aggressive. Remember, they haven't been paid for quite a while and they're looking to be paid.
Now, the good news here is states received $46 billion in rental assistance from the last COVID relief deal that will continue to be distributed. Now, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau just put out a new tool this week to help connect people with the money. There are also some other steps that renters facing eviction can take.
It's also my suggestion to contact the local bar association and local law schools. They often have what's called housing clinics and housing help assistance, and that may be a good resource for you to learn about the programs, find out what your rights are, and also help you apply for funds.
Now, she says a big key is keeping all this information organized, especially as you start receiving notices in the mail with scammers looking to take advantage.
It could contain information in it that has personal identifications in it, like the amount of debt that you owe, who your bank is. Information that's easily gotten either online or through credit bureaus can be bought. So remember, just because it looks official doesn't necessarily mean that it is.
Now, if you get any phone calls, she says, remember not to volunteer any personal information. Best thing to do, hang up and call your landlord, leasing agency, or loan provider directly. The pandemic has made it even more challenging for people already dealing with mental health issues like depression or anxiety. Houses of worship are recognizing this and working to become a place that more people can turn to for mental health support.
We can't cure mental illness. We can't make schizophrenia go away. We can't make anxiety disappear. God has graced therapists and psychologists and psychiatrists with the abilities to do that. But what we can do as ministers is be with them, love with them, support them, and allow them to be open about their struggles.
Simply beginning to talk about mental health and how we can love and support and care for one another and destigmatizing it in the ways that unfortunately we had in the past has really opened up conversation quite a bit.
Now, both religious leaders acknowledge historically faith communities have not done a good job of connecting with people living with mental illness or their families. Now, Reverend Dan Milford started a mental health ministry at his church, Covenant Presbyterian in San Antonio, more than 5 years ago. It includes a moment for mental health every Sunday when they educate the congregation about mental health issues. They've also offered mental health first aid for adolescents. And during the pandemic, they've trained companions to pair with people in the church who are considered at risk. The Presbyterian Mental Health Network has put out a guide on ways to care for our mental health during the pandemic.
We know that mental health resources are harder to come by in rural areas, in inner city areas. People of color often have less access.
We think a mental health ministry should be as common in a parish as youth ministry, as grief support ministry, as prison support ministry. It should be just one of those ministries that's offered every place, because mental health is thankfully becoming better understood.
Deacon Ed Schoner is trying to make that happen through his work with the Association of Catholic Mental Health Ministers. Now, the work is personal to him. His daughter had bipolar disorder, and she died by suicide in 2016. He says at the time, the church was the last place that he thought to go to talk about mental health concerns. He says currently, only about 10 to 15% of dioceses across the country have a mental health ministry. Now, if your parish doesn't have one and you would like to start it, you can find more information at catholicmhm.org. You can find additional resources from the Presbyterian Mental Health Network at pmhn.org. Doctors are worried about a recent uptick in sexually transmitted infections across the country.
There's less discussion between parents and kids about this stuff. They're just figuring it out online, and that's not always, Dr. Google is not always right.
The changing mindset among the younger generation, that is also playing a role.
And now let's get another check on our weather with Matt.
And it's going to be hot and humid as we head into the weekend. Any isolated thunderstorms this evening will be dying out by 10 o'clock. As we head into the morning hours on Saturday, things will be pretty quiet around here, and most of Saturday is looking quiet as well. That's showing a couple of isolated thunderstorms. I think rain chances as we head into Saturday are less than 20%. Then as we move into Sunday, maybe a couple of thunderstorms in the morning, and then by the afternoon, again, maybe a couple of storms, but rain chances only about 20% on Sunday. I think better chances will arrive as we head into early next week for Monday and Tuesday. And looking at temperatures tonight into the 70s for us, anywhere between 75 and 77. And those highs should make it up into the mid to upper 90s as we head into our Saturday afternoon. Of course, it will feel like it's over 100 when you factor in that good old humidity out there. And checking out your forecast, temperatures in the mid to upper 90s Saturday into Sunday, 20% chance of some isolated thunderstorms there on Sunday, 40% Monday and Tuesday as that front may lay down across the area, and temperatures come down just a hair between 93 and 95 degrees. And then we'll keep it between 93 and 95 as we head through most of next week. There could be a 20 to 30% chance for a couple of showers and thunderstorms around here, but it looks like those popcorn thunderstorms as we head into each afternoon for most of next week, maybe even the beginning of next weekend as well. Pretty typical summer pattern with temperatures at or slightly below normal.
The newsfeed starts with promising news for those looking for work. Wages rose at a healthy pace in the 3 months leading up to July, according to the Labor Department. Companies are trying to fill millions of available positions. Inflation's a big concern, especially with what you're buying online. Adobe says inflation's responsible for $1 of every $5 spent online, and Adobe thinks 2021 will be online shopping's first ever trillion-dollar year in the United States. Now, if you do want to catch a Broadway show, you better get vaccinated. Theater owners and operators have decided it will be a requirement. Also, you have to wear your mask during the show. Broadway is set to reopen for the first time in more than 16 months. Well, some shelter pets have come from such difficult backgrounds, they aren't ready to be adopted right away. Now, that's where the ASPCA's Rehabilitation Center comes in. And on Monday, how it's helping struggling pets learn to be great companions, and how the ASPCA's effort to spread awareness across the country. But still to come today, major changes are coming to FEMA's flood insurance program, how it could impact what millions of people pay for coverage. Israel is now giving people 60 and older a third dose of the COVID vaccine to improve immunity. The decision comes amid rising infections caused by the Delta variant. Earlier this month, Israeli health officials said protection against severe disease was around 93% 6 months after vaccination. Pfizer reported it at 97%. No U.S. or World Health Group has approved booster shots yet. Meanwhile, West Virginia will start checking immunity levels of older vaccinated residents. The state was one of the first to jump ahead early in vaccinating people in long-term care facilities. Now health experts want to know how protected those in nursing homes are. Last month, about 12% of COVID deaths in the state were among fully vaccinated people. Concerning possible connections between COVID and dementia, one Argentina study suggests the virus can have similar impacts on the brain as Alzheimer's. Now, it found changes can last at least 6 months in thinking and memory in older adults who recovered from the virus. In a separate study of New Yorkers, Alzheimer's-related proteins were found in the blood. Experts say more research is needed before drawing any conclusions. Now, our next story deals with a topic that is a bit uncomfortable to talk about. But physicians say the significant recent uptick in sexually transmitted infections is causing alarm. Sexually transmitted infections are also called STDs, and Dan Grossman shows us what new numbers are suggesting about the growing problem among young people and overall an unwillingness to get tested for sexually transmitted infections.
They are quite possibly the 3 most uncomfortable letters you could put on a TV screen.
People are not as worried about STDs as they once were.
But with the help of doctors Juliette Lehman and Sarah Logan,
we usually see an increased number in the late summer.
We're going to confront that discomfort head on because, quite frankly, it's important, like really important.
And having now had vaccinations and everything, they're more ready to get back out there, meet more people, and kind of go back to having a lot more sex.
That sex can be concerning because of this 40% figure. A study published in May by the American Journal of Preventive Medicine found screenings for STIs dropped by that much during the first 3 months of the pandemic and continued to trail 2019 numbers for the rest of the year. Doctors don't think the drop is entirely because people weren't having sex, but in large part because they weren't getting tested, which naturally would lead to wider spread of these diseases among people who some doctors say aren't as knowledgeable as they used to be.
I do, actually. I find that a lot of the younger generation, when I ask them if they even know how to put a condom on, they don't.
We're not here to show you that, but less education with more promiscuity has led to 6 straight years of the highest STI numbers in American history. Consider this. In 2019, the year with the most recent CDC data on STIs, cases of chlamydia rose 19%, gonorrhea 56%, and cases of syphilis rose 74% since the year 2015.
People are coming in for screening now, so we're catching up to the ones that were not screened because of the pandemic. So I do think that is playing a role.
The basic knowledge is still the same. Wear protection and get tested regularly. The difference comes in changing mindsets. A 2019 CDC survey of high school students found nearly 50% didn't use a condom the last time they had sex. They're also having more casual partners than before, which spells a this in these during this.
And so there's less discussion between parents and kids about this stuff. They're just figuring it out online, and that's not always, Dr. Google is not always right.
I'm Dan Grossman.
People who have fell victim to debt relief schemes are getting some money back. The Federal Trade Commission settled with companies that made false promises of helping people reduce interest rates on credit card debt in exchange for a fee. The victims also had money withdrawn from their bank accounts. The FTC is mailing nearly 8,000 refund checks, each for almost $300. Now, you will want to take a picture of your screen here because it is a list of all the brands of dog food recently part of a voluntary recall. The pet food company Sunshine Mills issued a recall as a precautionary measure. They say there may be elevated levels of a toxin produced by mold in the food. Food was sold nationwide under various sizes and lot numbers. The FDA website has all of those details. The food can be returned for a full refund. Now, from the Great Plains to the Florida coast, no matter where you call home, you can see here that every state has some kind of flood risk. 13 million Americans live in flood zones, and Chris Conti shows us some major changes coming to FEMA's flood insurance program that could impact how much you pay.
The tide comes in, the tide goes out. Such is life by the sea, a fog of uncertainty that often hangs heavy over coastal communities nationwide.
You're at the edge of the earth, you're in God's country. The rules are very, very, very different.
Over the years, Gordon Peabody has learned to respect the water.
Well, a surge will take you even over my hand.
As a coastal consultant, he's helped develop innovative techniques for protecting property owners. Ideas like this wall of pylons that diverts waves when they come in.
The wave energy comes in and then it's divided. That some of it goes that way and some of it goes that way.
The shorelines that Gordon walks are here in Provincetown, Massachusetts. Like many communities, they've seen their share of floods, from hurricanes to rising sea levels. As a result, FEMA has paid out hundreds of millions of dollars in flood insurance claims to property owners. The money pays for things like dune restoration and raising homes out of harm's way.
It helps the property owners with their insurance because they're going to be safe, but it totally transforms neighborhoods.
But the rates that people across the country pay for flood insurance are changing. FEMA has rebranded their flood insurance program, calling it Risk Rating 2.0. Insurance rates are now based on factors like a homeowner's distance to the water, types of flood exposure, and the cost of replacing a building. The higher a building's cost, the more expensive the premium, and vice versa.
It's not just coastal communities impacted by these changes. Some 13 million Americans live in flood zones, be it by the ocean, a river, or just a small stream.
What FEMA is saying is that the closer you are to the source of flooding, the higher your rates are going to be.
Shannon Holst is a floodplain specialist. She sees these changes as a major benefit to homeowners and business owners alike.
I do think that this is an important change because they are coming up to speed with the rest of the private market.
We also have this area here.
Back in Provincetown, building inspector Ann Howard is working almost daily on flood plans.
And it's paying off. I got to tell you, I'm exhausted still. It's a lot of work. It's an awful lot of work.
Efforts to manage climate change here have been decades in the making. Hard work that's paying off. FEMA recently dropped the entire flood risk rating for this town, meaning flood insurance rates here will drop by as much as 10%. And Howard sees this as the kind of model other cities and towns should emulate.
What we are demonstrating to FEMA by that is we are paying attention to substantial improvements, substantial damage to buildings.
Around here, they know there's no controlling the sea. Instead of ignoring the changes that are rolling in, this town is meeting the waves head on.
Everywhere we're living on borrowed time, but, you know, up against Mother Nature, you're really living again on borrowed.
In Provincetown, Massachusetts, I'm Chris Conti.
Thanks for joining us for 25 News at 6. We'll be back with more news and weather tonight at 10. Until then, have a good evening.